thing that you just did. I appreciate that. So that's kind of funny. I'm actually a July 13th birthday too, so. And I didn't even go to kindergarten. That's how old I am. But, so today we're going to talk about kindergarten readiness. Back in the day, when I was going to kindergarten, a lot of people didn't even go. It was looked at as much more optional. Some schools didn't even offer it. And where I was located, I was actually living in Germany at the time. There was no kindergarten available. So when I came back to the States, I went straight to first grade, and that wasn't that unusual. But things have really changed, and what the expectations are for kids who are going to kindergarten, that's really changed as well. And so I'd like to look at just kind of a little bit of the history of kindergarten. So if we look at our first slide here. Kindergarten has changed. In 1960, only 10% of kids, 3 and 4, went to either preschool, pre-kindergarten, and sometimes they never even went to kindergarten. Compared to in 2005, we have 69% of 4-year-olds attending some sort of pre-kindergarten program, whether it's preschool or pre-K, but they're enrolled in something like that. And then in 1970, there was just like an explosion of state funding in the area of early learning. There began to be much more research along the lines of the importance of laying a good foundation early on with reading. And so you saw 1970 is also when we saw the implementation of the federally funded Head Start program. And we also saw states begin to invest in early education. And so now we have, it's $2 billion by the year 2000 that we're spending in early education. And these statistics are from the Center for Public Education. And then I think there might be one more slide. Yeah, so that if we could just go back one. The federally funded Head Start budget this year, $6.4 billion. So a lot of money being spent on early education in this country. And along with that has become a higher and higher standard for what kids are learning before they go to kindergarten and what they're learning in kindergarten. Is it possible for me to kind of stand up and look at my slide? Okay, I don't want to mess up the whole recording of it. But, so let's go to the next slide. Oh no, I'm sorry, that one. So now we have a state mandate in this state. The goal is to eventually have 100% funded full-day kindergarten in the state. And that's by the year 2017-18 school year. The legislature has passed laws that they're holding themselves accountable to a deadline that by that time there'll be full-day kindergarten available to every student in the state. Right now, that's not the case. You have some schools that have full-day kindergarten, some don't. Sometimes only kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch can go to full-day kindergarten. So there's a lot of limitations on it. And so just to kind of give you an idea, right, in 2013 there were only 44% of kids had access to full-day kindergarten. And in addition to that, our state is expanding the preschool, the pre-kindergarten program, and they just added 1,350 new seats in pre-kindergarten statewide, and that's according to a Seattle Times article. So let's go. So what I did was I handed out the Arlington School District kindergarten learning goals. And so that'll give you, I know you probably come from different school districts, but that was kind of the one I guessed would be most applicable to most of you. And the learning goals include everything from reading, writing, social studies, science, health, math, So it's really very comprehensive goals for the kindergarten year in the Arlington School District, and even music, which I think is encouraging. But there's not a lot of focus on things like building fine motor skills. And the reason behind that is, although they're practicing those skills, there is more and more an expectation that when your kids get to kindergarten, they already know how to hold their pencil, they already know how to write their name, they already know how to use a pair of scissors. So some of that, it used to be you went to kindergarten to learn your letters and learn your colors and your shapes and how to use a pencil, but that's no longer the case. So they're not really focusing on that anymore in kindergarten. There's kind of an expectation that they want you to be already ready to do that. And with the building fine motor skills, one reason I specifically bring that up is that it is an area where when kids are behind, that can be a key area where they tend to be behind other children, and where it's important to catch it early and focus on it. So just being aware of where your kids are in terms of holding their pencil, using scissors, that can be an area where kids need a little extra attention before they go to kindergarten. There's not a lot of focus on following directions. There's just a sense of, when the teacher says to join the class on the mat, you know what that means, to follow those kinds of simple directions. Put your coat away, push your chair under the table, that sort of thing. There's a sense of kids having had that experience of listening to adult and following simple directions. And that seems like a small thing, but it really can hold a child back if they've never really had to interact in that way with an adult where they're following simple tasks and just kind of going along with the group. So sometimes things that can be helpful with that is just even having them in, well, like the group that you're in today, your kids are getting some sort of instruction where they're at, that sort of thing, interacting with other students. And, Sunday school class and, preschool class, whatever they can be involved in where they're having to follow directions and kind of go along with the group and be involved. So one thing, the kindergarten has moved to a highly academic program. It's not just about socializing and getting kids used to being in groups and getting along with one another. That's probably the biggest change that's kind of evolved over the years. So let's go to the next. So I want to talk a little bit about Common Core. And I know Common Core causes a lot of anxiety among some people and even some controversy. There's controversy about it. So where I want to approach it is just kind of how it's impacting learning. And at the kindergarten level, even at the kindergarten level, the Common Core is impacting the curriculum. So there are higher standards for reading, or actually a focus on spelling. So for years, there was almost like a sense in the education community that spelling wasn't important. And so now we've kind of come full circle on that. And Common Core, you're starting to really see that reintroduction of spelling and the importance of understanding the phonics rules and all of that. So there is going to be a focus on the spelling again. And higher standards for reading comprehension are what we talk about. You'll see it in the Common Core referred to as just reading with intention and with purpose, so that when kids are reading something, beginning at the very start in kindergarten, beginning to lay that foundation that when you read, it's in order to understand, to gain information, to know what the author was trying to say. So there's going to be a much more of a focus on that, the introduction of the Common Core standards. And one thing with the Common Core standards is that no matter what you think about it, there is one piece of it that is really positive, that if we have the same core standards in our education system, if your husband gets a job in Texas tomorrow, then you're not going to have this culture shock in the school where it's completely different focus than what you're trying to accomplish in school. I had that where my dad was a Vietnam vet, and the year I was in 2nd grade, I went to 3 schools because my dad was doing his training before he went to Vietnam. And by the end of 2nd grade, I was so lost in math, because I had gone from schools, I went to school in El Paso, Texas, North Carolina, and Idaho, and by the time I got to Idaho, I was a little lost in 2nd grade math. And because things were so drastically different in the curriculum. So our world has become much more mobile, and people don't settle down and retire in the same little town as like they used to. And so it is more important that there's standardization with our curriculum. So I think that's a large part of the thought behind it. We're also going to see a higher level writing skills, where in the kindergarten curriculum, they're going to be teaching a student to not only write a few sentences, but state their opinion, be able to give information clearly, and then also tell a story, which is a narrative. So it used to be you learned these things much later in school, but they're laying a good foundation for writing, which is really important because it doesn't always matter what you know if you can't put it on paper effectively. And then learning to seek information through asking good questions. And language, there's a new focus on the nuances in word meanings and a very strong emphasis on vocabulary. And so even like, for example, one example they gave, and you'll see this in the handout that I gave you, not just knowing a word to walk, but also jump and skip, and being able to demonstrate the differences between these these verbs. So that's one example. So our reading standards, I wanted to just lay this out here. So what I did was I pulled out what we're trying to accomplish by the end of the 1st trimester in kindergarten, and then what we're trying to accomplish by the end of the 3rd trimester. So you can kind of see the progression from one end of the year to the next, the beginning of the year to the end. So the 1st trimester, students are expected to be reading simple books. So by the end of the 1st trimester of kindergarten, we want kids reading. And so you used to go to 1st grade to learn how to read, and now we're reading in kindergarten. So if you have kids who are just starting out in kindergarten and they don't know how to write their name, they don't know how to use a pair of scissors, they don't know their colors, you can imagine how far behind they're going to feel if by the end of the 1st trimester they need to be reading a book. So, and then by the end of the 3rd trimester, they're expected to know sight words, associate long and short vowel sounds, and read with comprehension, and not just with comprehending the story, but kind of what was the author's intent and being able to follow along with the mind of the author, which is more in-depth thinking. So then we have standards. I'm sorry, that should say standards in writing. I just had a little bit of a glitch with my program there. So by the end of their 1st trimester, students are expected to write facts about topics or books. So we are writing right from the very beginning. And just kind of looking at my own experience, when I did, actually, you know what, I just realized, I actually went to 1st grade in Germany in a school that was set up by the United Kingdom for their military personnel there. And they had a very strong emphasis on the written word. And I'm telling you, that did me good my entire life. And I always did very well in school because I could write my thoughts. Well, I was taught from the very beginning to keep a journal, to write about everything I experienced. And I love this focus on writing because at Sylvan, so many times I can't tell you how many parents I talk to whose kids can read on grade level or above. They can do math on grade level or above, but they can't put their thoughts on paper effectively. And so that learning to write what you know is very important, and I'm actually glad that they're focusing on this. So by the end of the 3rd trimester, students are expected to be able to write about events in sequence. So not just random facts about what happened in the story, but tell this is what happened at the beginning, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this is how they wrapped up the book. So being able to write in sequence. Also talk about how they feel about what happened or what they read, and be able to write at least two sentences that include capital, spaces, ending marks, and include the correct spelling of the sight words that they've been learning. So this is a big step up, a really big step up, because when my kids are in their 20s, when my kids were going to kindergarten, they were allowed to spell everything just how they thought it should sound. There was no emphasis whatsoever on the spelling. So this is a big transition that they're making back to really focusing on the spelling. So the math standards, and I didn't cover the music and the social studies and stuff, I just wanted to focus on the three main subjects. So the math standards, end of the first trimester, students are expected to count to 100, read, write, and represent numbers 0 through 20, count objects to 20, and classify objects in categories. So pretty simple. And most kids, they like learning how to count, and if you work with them with the objects they're interested in, they'll like learning how to count numbers too. But by the end of, or count objects too, by the end of the third trimester, students expected to compare objects based on length, width, and height. So that is a much more in-depth critical thinking skill in being able to compare one object to another and understand the concept of adding and subtracting. And so then, once they understand the concept, being able to show with objects or their fingers how, if I have 5 and I take away 2, what do I have? I have 3, that sort of thing. And then to quickly, and what we call automaticity, so not having to think about it a long time, what's 1 plus 2? What's 3 plus 1? And being able to do that in their head quickly and produce the answer pretty much automatically. And that's just for numbers 1 through 5, adding and subtracting. And then make numbers. This is the one that's a little more difficult because now we're talking about place value, which is oftentimes a hard thing for kindergartners to get their mind around. It's a little bit more of an abstract concept that we have 10s column and we have 1 column. So we're going to break these apart and represent them. And I have 1 10 and I have 5 1s, that sort of thing. Breaking apart a number and showing the parts and place value. So, how can we get ready for kindergarten? So what can you be doing as a mom to make sure your child is ready for kindergarten? We can practice shapes, colors, and the alphabet. That's, 100% something that we should definitely be doing. And there's so many cool learning games, things that will help you with that sort of thing. And so I think that's kind of an easy one. The other one is practicing holding the pencil. And one thing that I think is an effective tool for that, if you have a child who just can't seem to get them to hold the pencil correctly, is get them a toy that's about that big for them to hold with their 3 fingers. And you can even, I've seen it where you can take a hairband, and tie it with a piece of yarn to that toy, put the hairband around their wrist, and then the toy on the yarn. They think that's fun. So now they've got the toy in their fingers, and now the pencil slips naturally into place. And so if they have to hold on to the toy, they have to hold their fingers in the right position. So that's one way. If you have a child who's really struggling with how to hold a crayon, how to hold a pencil, that's one way that you can work with them. And, once you got the pencil in their hand, teaching them to write their name. Sometimes some kids you have to start with tracing the letters. Let's make a trace of your name. Now you copy over it. Or you write the letter, now you copy what mom did. And so just however you have to break it down to have them practicing their name. Practice using the scissors. Just all kinds, and most little kids, they love practice using. I have a grandson who's 4, and He would use those scissors all day long if I let him. And so then practicing their name. And you know, sometimes it's just fun. Oh, let's put your name on that. You know, that's your lunch. Let's put your name on your lunch bag. And practice following directions. Can you push all the chairs in? Can you pick up these blocks and put them over here? Just different, being conscious that your child needs to learn to follow directions. And directions like put it up, put it under, turn it around, so that they become familiar with those direction words. And then practice the letter sounds, or the fancy word is phoneme. So you might hear that. You might have a teacher say to you someday, well, I don't think he has all the phonemes. Well, it's the sounds the letters make. They call them phonemes. And then when you blend them together, they're phonics. Practicing those, because the ability to hear, there's a lot of research, and the ability to hear early on the sounds the letters make is directly connected with how successful you'll be as a reader later. So that is a specific skill you can really focus on. And practice segmenting the words. So, and I've got a slide that I want to show you about that in a minute. And then practice the sight words. I would go online, and you know, sometimes there is a place for flashcards in the world, and sight words is one of those places where this is the, you know, and just remembering those little sight words. If they know those words already, then when they begin to read simple books, it's so much easier for them to put it together. So here is something that you could make on your own. If you have Microsoft Word and you can make a PowerPoint presentation, you can make a slide like this on your own. And this is a phoneme exercise. So in Microsoft PowerPoint, you can make a little icon and you can record something for that icon with your own voice. So you can record your voice saying, fan. Let's say fan. And then you could say the phonemes. F, a, n. And then you could say, now say it fast, fan. And you can make these for your child. And they did research with this concept, and kids make a lot of progress learning their phonemes this way. It's what they call phoneme segmentation. And then you could have your child sitting there while you're cooking dinner, and basically they're getting tutored in their phonemes because you've made these slides. So it's something, I love DIY stuff. I don't know about you, but I love stuff I can make myself. And so this is something that you can do that has research behind it, and you simply go online and you find a picture of a fan and a picture of a bat, and you just put the picture up, you record yourself saying it, segmenting the word, and then say it fast, and then they say it together with you fast, fan. And so that's an effective way to work with your kids to build their phoneme segmentation. So with math, make it fun, you know. There's nothing more fun than counting M&Ms or Skittles or something, you know, that they're excited about eating. Or, you know, raisins or something like that if you want to be more natural. But our counting favorite toy collections, you know, a lot of times with my grandson, he's into, you know, dinosaurs, you know, he's counting the dinosaurs. How many dinosaurs do we have? How many green dinosaurs do we have? How many yellow dinosaurs do we have? And if we add the greens and the yellows, how many do we have all together? That's doing math, but making it fun. And making numbers with Play-Doh. And the reason I threw this one in here is that I want to just talk a little bit about learning style. And some kids are just much more, they really need to get their hands on things. Not even just counting toys is enough for them. It just would help them to form the letters and the numbers with Play-Doh, something like that. Or having a shallow box of sand and making the letters and the numbers with their finger in the sand. So just knowing your own child and what they would find interesting and what would engage them for a longer period of time is important. And then playing games with dice or cards. if you think about it, there's a lot of counting that can be done. Okay, so we're going to throw the dice. Okay, let's write the problem. What would it look like? It's a 1 and a 3. 1, and then what would we, if we were going to add them, what would we put? The plus sign, and then then we put 3, and then we use the equal sign. What does that equal? And then just counting them, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you make a game out of it. Just about every time you make a game out of something, kids are going to learn more quickly. So I want to just transition to the discussion time. And I'm a big believer that moms help moms and that we can learn from each other. I heard a thing yesterday on Family Life Today. I don't know if you guys heard the MOPS, CEO of MOPS was on Dennis Rainey's Family Life Today yesterday, and she was just talking about how it's not just the things we've done really well that help other people, but it's also the struggles that we've gone through. And I know for myself, I had one of my kids really struggle with learning. And it really helped me. It wasn't until I interacted with other moms that I began to realize that my daughter was behind and I needed to get some help to figure out why she wasn't learning to read. So it's like, not that we want to compare our kids with we don't want to compare one kid to another, but sometimes it does give you a context to really know whether your child needs some extra help. When you talk to another mom, and say, my daughter, I tried to teach her A for 3 days in a row and she still doesn't get it. And that was my experience with my daughter when she was 6 and she still was not picking up the skills. And I was actually trying to homeschool her, so I was really isolated. But, when I interacted with other moms and found out that just wasn't the way it usually goes, then I knew that I needed to get some help. And we did an assessment, and she actually had a specific learning disability. And the reason I bring that up is because just my experience with Sylvan has shown me how important it is early on to intervene. When you have kids who are struggling to learn to read, as a mom, here's my first kid, and I've never been through this before, and I'm thinking, well, she'll pick it up, she'll get it, eventually she'll just start reading one day. And it didn't happen, and so I kept thinking, oh, she's a late bloomer. I had, kind of a whole thought process that I went through, and so it has kind of come to my attention as I worked with Sylvan and after that, how important it is to intervene early when kids struggle with things like dyslexia or processing issue. It's important to get them help early on, and especially with dyslexia. And one thing I like to tell parents is that it's that kids who have dyslexia, they see things really differently than other people, and so it's important that they get the kind of help that will really help them. And so you need a program that's going to present the information in a way that will help them. And I think sometimes just reaching out for some help can be really the best thing that you can do. So I know that's what we had to do with our daughter. It wasn't until she got some specific help that she was able to learn to read. And she did fine. Now she's been to college and she's doing good. But so then one other thing, I want to backtrack for a second. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, because the thing that I like about making those slides is that it kind of frees mom up. You can do a learning activity with your child and not have to be so hands-on with them because maybe you have to cook dinner or change a diaper or something else is going on. There's another thing that's like that, and we use this at Sylvan a lot, where a student has headphones on, they listen to the book on tape and follow along in the book. And it's so powerful because they're seeing the words, they're hearing the words, they're hearing the person reading the story use the proper phrasing and pacing, and they get the idea of what fluency sounds like. And it's a really powerful tool for that early reading. So that's another thing you can do as a mom. You can go to the library, you can get the book, you can get the book on tape, and that's something where your 4 or 5-year-old can sit at the kitchen table while you're chopping veggies, and they can listen to a book and they can practice their reading without you having to sit down and read to them. I mean, it's really important that you read to them also, but sometimes, let's face it, sometimes you don't always have time to do that. So I like to give little tips to moms where they can do it and still get some of the things done that they have to do. But I'd like you to spend a few minutes with these discussion questions, because I think you can teach each other. And don't be afraid, kind of going back to what the leader at MOPS was saying on the radio yesterday. Just don't be afraid to say, I tried this and it really didn't work for me. And I really tried pushing my kids with flashcards with the math fast and it didn't work. This worked better instead. Whatever it is, not just your successes, but the things that didn't work, the resources that helped you, the things that weren't so helpful. I think can really be helpful for your mothers that you're trying to help. So I don't mind taking a few questions if you guys have questions, but maybe it'd be better if you did the discussion. Go ahead. But
I just had a question
about
kids that are advanced. Like, at what age can you tell if they're gifted, and should you really push them? My kids are always bored, and I feel like whatever I look up, it should be at their level. They're beyond that, and I don't want to push them too hard. So,
well, one thing I would say about kids who are a little more advanced is that it is important to challenge them, because a few things can happen. One, they can get bored and check out in school, and 2, they can get lazy, and that things can be so easy for them, and then they'll hit, I see so many kids who are advanced, and they hit about 5th grade, and suddenly it gets hard in math, or it gets hard in language arts, and they kind of go, I've never had to work hard, and they don't really know what to do with that. They kind of, and sometimes they kind of fold. And Sherry, do you have something to say?
Right here.
Yeah.
I have that.
Yeah.
She's 19 now. One of the things that was really important and I learned really early on is that we took the basic things that were expected of them and we expanded on them. So she created PowerPoints about them so that she could present them to mom and dad because she was an only child. So we just made really big expansions on the things that were already expected. That way, because I too didn't want to push her beyond, but I also wanted to keep her really engaged. And as you move forward, there's a lot of gifted programs in the schools, and they tend to stick with the curriculum. They just go beyond it, 4 steps where you're doing a research project. Maybe they were just talking about the moon, but now because your child is advanced, they went through all of them and they created a presentation and they made the models to go with it. And they did the things that you would typically think is starting in about 5th grade and doing projects and stuff like that. We just did a lot more of those at our house, got out, built salt maps and things like that to go.
So take what they're learning, say, in school, and
just,
we already do that anyway.
Yeah,
so.
and just go and use a lot more. I always use so much technology, and she's 19 now, but she works for Dell. So yeah, we used it to the best of our advantage. I taught her how to write a paper and about what she was working on really early, probably 1st and 2nd grade. We were writing huge stories and doing PowerPoint presentations on Pokemon because she was really into that. So, so you just take whatever's there and just completely expand on it and go beyond what they're doing at school, because you know that there's scientific journals and things like that can go so beyond what they're doing. So that you can stick with what they're supposed to be doing so that you're not making them bored for the rest of their life by teaching them everything that's coming, but just going so much, delving deeper in it.
Yeah, that's good. Does that answer your question? Or?
Yeah.
I know you were kind of interested about the timing, and some of that, honestly, partially that depends on what's available at school, because in some schools you have gifted programs.
My brother was gifted, I was gifted, so, my husband's smart, so I assume just by what they are showing her that they would be, so.
Yeah. So, and sometimes it's good to go and find out what's available at the school district, because sometimes if you get them involved in a gifted program, they have to switch schools too, so just kind of
so my daughter's starting kindergarten next year, so would they have anything at that age?
It's usually kindergarten. They usually choose them and talk about it. They usually, in most school districts around here, it's first grade.
Oh, yeah.
So they start doing the testing and stuff. But if you are talking to your teachers, the teachers will also do some things in their kindergarten class to enhance that and help them and go beyond what they're doing. Stephanie, my daughter, did a lot of peer teaching, co-teaching with her students, did a lot of group teaching in kindergarten and first grade until she was tested. She had a lot of great teachers that kind of saw that already. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question before we can break into discussion?
I was just going to say, if the DGLs want to take this question to their groups, that would be fantastic. And I have your handouts too. The one went around, but this one is 2 pages, correct?
Right.
Okay. So just make sure you take the first and second page.
And then I'm going to add 2 more things just before you go, because she said sand in a box. You can just get the clothing boxes that you wrap Christmas presents in and put salt in it. Salt is really cheap, 89 cents. You can pour a jar in it and you can write out words and letters. The other thing that a lot of them like to do, we use it for spelling at Sylvan, is shaving cream on the table. Spread it all out, write words and your numbers in it. And then if you're looking up salt sight words, it's Dolce, D-O-L-C-H-E. That's what all of the school districts use. They're called Dolce sight words. And it'll tell you kindergarten, first, second, third, all your grades. And now that not only do they have to know them and read them, they have to spell them. So those are the words that you should start with if you're going to work on those words.